the few who remain of the men who fought those battles for Ypres.
I think in a way we like to have Armistice Day because we like to think about the old boys. You talk things over, although you probably laugh about it now, but it doesn't laughing matter when you think about it. But the mud, you see the mud, they said went down to 12 feet. So in some places it was 12 feet deep. And if they got in it, you know, you couldn't get out.
I don't believe there's one living today who could show no wounds for it. But sooner or later, when you went into battle, you're going to get something. They always said, the bullet's made for you, your name's written on it, and you'll get it.
Well, you're lucky when you got through and you left a lot of pals behind you.
Left, right, left, right, left. You get on the step on the left-hand side.
It's a place I want to come back to because my last army pal was killed when we went over down towards Daddy's Hill. And I hope to lay a wreath there tomorrow in the cemetery.
Up and you think of the boys that are gone, and you think of the things that happened, the horrible things very often that happened, and a tear comes to Benelia, very often does. I'm not ashamed of it. I suppose soldiers shouldn't cry, but we do.
Well, quite honestly, I broke down. Didn't I? I cried. I did. I couldn't help it. I don't know what made me cry. I did. I cried, and I don't know what made me cry. I was thinking, I suppose, of the time we was over here and going over the top, and seeing your mates being shot down all around you. I lost members of my family, I have.
I was thinking about the lads I'd lost. I lost it. Practically every pal I had finished up being killed.
"70 years is a long time. The soldiers who lie dead in the old Ypres salient have long since turned to dust. But still people come back to Ypres. This is the crater blown by the mine that finally blasted the Germans off Hill 60. Ethel Gaze has come to visit the spot where Jim Smith buried her brother, Ernie.
I was only 5 when he was killed, But I remember him as a very fun-loving, jolly sort of person who made a tremendous fuss of me as I was the baby of the family at the time. My mother never really believed that Ernie had died. In fact, years later, we'd be in the town, walking through the market, and she'd clutch your arm and say, "I'm sure I saw Ernie over there." Although she had two of Ernie's friends had visited her and told her just what had happened.
I wasn't working with Ernie that night, so I didn't know he'd been killed until we had a roll call when we come back. The next night we went up again. We were told off to work in groups of 7. When it came to the end, there were 3 of us left over. The sergeant said, "Right, you 3, bury your gaze." It was a terrible thing to have to bury my own pal. We dug a grave, then the other 2 fellas took his shoulders, I took his legs, and we buried him. We covered him over, but the grave wasn't very deep. I don't suppose he'd be there very long, with all the shelling that was going on.
I felt that I was in touch with Ernie. I did, really.
Hill 60 is a ghostly place, still pockmarked by the pounding of the guns, still sinister with pillboxes, still heavy with the presence of violence and death. They say there are 5,000 bodies here, British and German. For the ground was fought over so bitterly, bombarded so mercilessly, so mangled and torn apart, that the hill simply swallowed its dead. Most of the bodies they found after the war were brought here to Tynecott Cemetery, just below Passchendaele village, and they made the graves among the pillboxes that defended it. In this cemetery alone, there are 12,000 graves, and there is a second memorial to the missing, for even the vast Menin Gate, although it bears 56,000 names, was not quite vast enough to hold all the names of the men who disappeared in the swamps around Ypres. The rest, 35,000 of them, are commemorated here. Ernie Gaze is one of them. And David Watson of the 9th Royal Scots has come looking for the name of his friend, Private Meek.
A pal I had in the 12th Battalion got together with Meek. I thought the other one was alive. McCracken was the last one. I thought he was alive. Oh, I'm just shattered. That finished all my army pals, everyone that I picked up in the army, not relations or close friends. Everyone have gone.
After the war, when the last grim reckonings were made, thousands of mourning relatives besieged the authorities for permission to exhume graves and take their boys home. But so many were missing. So many graves were of men only known unto God that it would have seemed an injustice. Only one man was brought home to represent the million other soldiers of Great Britain and the Dominions who stayed behind. They called him the Unknown Warrior. And so that the body could not possibly be identified, it was selected by an elaborate method. 4 unknowns were exhumed from 4 separate battlefields. They were brought to the headquarters of Brigadier General Wyatt at St. Paul and placed in the chapel. One was chosen to be the Unknown Warrior in such secrecy that no one could ever know which. The other bodies were reburied. In Bluet Farm Cemetery in the old salient, the grass is still discolored on the spot where they dug up one of those 4 bodies. A Tommy, a Jock, a Canadian, an Anzac. Is he one of the 3 anonymous soldiers who was reburied at St. Paul? Or did the chance which had brought him to war send him home in the pomp and the circumstance of peace? Whatever the answer, in one sense, he lies, like so many of his comrades, in Ypres. For the ship that brought him home brought 6 barrels of earth dug up from the salient to fill the tomb. They took the anonymous Tommy, or Jock, or Canadian, or Anzac to Westminster Abbey to become the unknown warrior and to be buried in state among the captains and the kings. And the captains and the kings turned out in all their dignity to escort him. It was a sight that sickened a few, but it gratified many. 1 million people filed past the coffin. The new cenotaph was almost submerged under a sea of 100,000 private wreaths. Whitehall, at the ceremonial heart of the British Empire, was undeniably a fit and proper place for an official monument to the Empire's dead. But London and Whitehall were distant and, in a sense, impersonal. Too much to do with official observance, too little to do with the individual Tommies and Jocks and Canadians and Anzacs. So in the disillusioned 20s, when they had expected to be building the new world that the young men had gone off to fight for, the nations were building sepulchres to the young men who never came back.
You hated tours of trenches. You were proud of nothing more than having good years to spend. Longed to get home and join the careless crowd of chaps who work in peace with time for friend. Goodbye, old lad. Remember me to God, and tell him that our politicians swear they won't give in till Prussian rule's been trod under the heel of England. Are you there? Yes. And the war won't end for at least 2 years, but we've got stacks of men. I'm blind with tears, staring into the dark. Cheero, I wish they'd killed you in a decent show.
Strontian in the West Highlands of Scotland spoke for the world, and Strontian had a right to speak. For this tiny community of a few hundred souls had lost 36, almost all, of her young men. They placed their memorial among the hills they had tramped, and the loch they had fished, and the road that had taken them away, and they chose for it a simple inscription. These were ours in the days of their boyhood, and their names have become our heritage.
I have a heart that's broken, that's broken, that's broken. I have a heart that's broken, that's broken and tore. But I get it tell a soldier, a soldier, a soldier. I get it tell a soldier before he get a war.